ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकाया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्य मनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वापदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च। श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगना रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपदान् सहगना ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबन्धु जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिकान्त राधाकान्त नमोस्तुते। तप्तकाञ्चना गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवे प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानन्द श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। I am very grateful to be with you today, and I sincerely thank you for being here. Those of you who are studying Bhagavad Gita or coming from various universities, I welcome you, although I'm a guest and you're here more than me. But it really is an honor and a privilege to have this chance to serve you. Today I was asked to speak on Chapter 5, Text 16 of Sri Bhagavad Gita. Jnanina tu tadajnanam yesham nashitamatmanaha tesham adityavajjnanam prakashayati tatparam. When, however, one is enlightened with the knowledge by which nescience is destroyed, then his knowledge reveals everything, as the sun lights up everything in the daytime. Please imagine it's a moonless night. There's no lights. You're driving down the highway in the middle of the winter in a car, and your lights go out. Will you be afraid? You cannot see anything. Darkness is the foundational cause of all fear. When we don't know where we're going, what's in front of us, what's on either side of us, may we walk into a ditch or drive off the road, down a mountain, who's behind us? It's a very fearful situation. We fear what we do not know. But as soon as the light comes up, we see everything as it is. And there's very little fear. I remember years ago, I was in the Himalayas, and it was pitch dark on a moonless night, and I was walking on a mountain path. And I walked right off the path and rolled down a steep hill, bouncing off of trees. And finally, when I came to the bottom, I fell into a creek of water. And it was so dark, I couldn't even see my own hand in front of my face. And every time I started walking, I would just walk into a tree or trip in a hole. And I didn't know which way to go. I didn't know which direction was up or which direction was down. So I just sat there until the sun rose, about 5-6 hours later. Yes, darkness is a cause of fear because we don't know what's around us. In the 1970s, I believe, in New York, there was a great blackout. Do you remember that? All the electricity stopped. And the entire city came to a standstill. There was massive panic. The whole city practically was in hysteria. Many of you who are from New York, your parents will remember that. You may have even been here. And what was the problem? Just no light. Darkness. How we spend our money very much indicates our consciousness. And in this world, one of the major economic impetuses and one of the primary purposes of spending money, directly or indirectly, is fear. How much money in the world is going into military, building bombs, weapons, and fighting wars? Is there anything that demands a bigger budget here in the United States than that? And most countries in the world? Fear. And the pharmaceutical industry, it's based on fear of disease and ultimately fear of death. And the cosmetic industry, it's the psychological fear that I don't look as cool as I want to look. So we cover our wrinkles or whatever defects. Whether you cover them or not, they're there. But we are afraid that people will see them and not think very highly of us. Different type of health plans and physical fitness. Much of it is motivated by fear of not looking the way we want to look, not being as healthy as we want. even food. My mother and father were brought up in the Great Depression. My father had to leave school at the age of 15 to work full-time for about 5 cents a day. And the whole family practically was working just to get a couple loaves of 2-day-old bread. This was in the United States of America. Fear of hunger. And to this day, my father's 86 years old, and it had such a traumatic impression on him that whenever he sees me, his first question, "Did you get enough to eat today?" Wherever I go, people are giving me food. We take it for granted. But even though now he's somewhat wealthy, still there's that fear of hunger because he's experienced it. I remember many years ago, I met with Mother Teresa, and she told me the greatest problem in this world is hunger. Not hunger of the belly. That could be filled with some food. Hunger of the heart. Hunger means emptiness. People's hearts are empty because people need to feel loved, and people need to love. In the emptiness of that loving exchanges, people are lonely. The hunger of the heart. And I remember she told me that only God's love and loving God can actually fill the hunger of the heart. Hunger is something like darkness. Darkness is simply the absence of light. To be without. And it causes insecurity, anxiety, and most of all, fear. How many people in this world fear death? Yet death is inevitable. Death is one of the most natural things in this world. Yes, we see a flower, it grows, it sprouts, it buds, it blossoms, and then gradually it withers away. Do we cry when it withers away? It's just the natural evolution of the life of a flower. So similarly, for us, we become a little seed within our mother, then we begin to grow, then we come out a little baby, and usually the first thing we do is cry. Have you ever heard of a baby that comes out and laughs? Did you ever think of that? Why, when babies come out, they cry, they don't laugh? Whether you're black or white or red or yellow or man or woman or from a rich family or a poor family, or whether you're from the east or the west or the north or the south, when you're born, you cry. That's your first expression, practically. Because the baby really doesn't know where she or he is, or who they are, or what's around them. It's a very mysterious situation, just coming out of the womb, where they've been in darkness for a long time. And as we grow older, this fear of death becomes more and more prominent, because you know, with every moment, we're one moment closer to death. It's natural. Why do we fear death? For a very simple reason. Because we do not know where we're going. We don't know if we even exist after death. Is this the annihilation of everything? In order to resolve this dilemma of the inevitable, when we apparently lose our identity and everything that is near to us, everything that we love, everyone that we love, it's just stripped away at that moment. It's because we never really knew who we are. An example. We have a hospital in Bombay, and on a regular basis we go to villages where people have little or no money, and we do these cataract eye camps. Because it's very common in India and other third world countries that poor people go blind because of untreated cataracts. It's a very, very serious problem. Hundreds and thousands of people go blind every year in that country because they just don't have money to treat their cataracts. Now when a person has a cataract for a long time, you can't see anything as it is. Everything's hazed, everything's covered. But when you remove the cataract, you can see things as it is. We do one eye camp in a place called Barsana, which is the home of Sri Radharani in Vrindavan. And areas close to there are simple villages where people are extremely poor. And we go there in an advanced party, and people who have cataracts, we make arrangements so we pick them up and bring them when the camp is there. And I remember this one old lady, she was probably about late 80s, early 90s, and she hadn't really been able to see for some years. And they removed these, she's just wearing rags, very thin, lives the most poverty type of lifestyle. And there were very well-to-do Bombay wealthy physicians treating her. And when she actually had her sight back, the first thing she did was she went to the temple to see the altar of the Lord. And she was so happy. She said, "This is all I want to see in my life. I can see again. I can see my Lord again." And she went to these doctors and started slapping them on the back with just blissfully smiling, saying, "I bless you, my son. I bless you. May Radharani's love grow in your heart." And these doctors felt so blessed. They do treatments for all these wealthy people in Bombay, and they get so much money, but they never got such a treasure of a gift as the blessings of this old lady, because she could see again. So this darkness is the cataract of ignorance, avidya. Ignorance is to not understand who we are or where we're going. Back to that analogy of that dark road. We're afraid because we don't know what's ahead of us. We don't know where we're going. What's going to happen next? You can't just stand there. You have to move forward, but you don't know what's going to happen. Enlightenment means simply to see everything as it is, as it has always been, and as it will always be. Truth is light. Ignorance is darkness. Truth is an ever-flowing current. It never ceases. These are the primary questions that Bhagavad Gita begins to answer. Who am I? Where am I coming from? What is happiness? What is the purpose of life? And what Gita is teaching us here in this verse, that all of this knowledge is inherent within us. In fact, the great thinkers of the past, they define knowledge in a very different way than what we're taught in today's world. Knowledge today is how much we can impose upon our brains data. Yes? Useful data. We learn it, we memorize it, or at least we know where to find it. Yes? And the more we have, the more we can speak very interestingly and mesmerize people's minds. The more we're useful to make money based on data. But that's not knowledge. Knowledge means to uncover the inherent wisdom that is within our own hearts. Knowledge is not to be imposed from the outside, it is to be awakened from within. Like the full moon is eclipsed, similarly the full moon of the wisdom of our own souls is eclipsed by the shadow of ignorance. And unfortunately, we spend so much of our time, our energy, our money, and everything else on somehow or other trying to better the situation within the darkness. Is that not true? Very few people make any effort to turn on the light. We just somehow or other try to make things as best as possible, where there's as little pain and as much pleasure within the darkness. In the second chapter of Gita, it is said, Natveva ham jatu nasam, natvam neme janarada. It's beginning to explain the nature of the essence of who we are. We are light. We are the Atma, the soul, the source of consciousness. Consciousness lights up the body. Did you ever see a dead corpse and look in the eyes? There's no light. It's just a dark glaze. But as soon as someone's alive, there's a certain light that shines out of that person's eye. Years ago, I studied dead corpses, actually. In the bank of the Ganges in Benares, I used to watch people brought there to be burned, just to study what is death. There's just no light in their eyes. There's no love, there's no thought, there's no feeling, there's nothing there. So as soon as this soul enters into the body, there's a certain type of life and light. That's who we are. We're passing through childhood and youth and old age. But who is it that's passing through these changes? If I am the body, then every 7 or 8 years, I'm a different person. When you were a baby, your body would probably be unrecognizable to anyone but your mother. And then people think I am the mind, I'm not the body. But the mind changes faster than the body. What were you thinking of when you were a 1-month-old baby? You were thinking of the milk of your mother. Yes? Now many of you are students in colleges, universities. When was the last time you were thinking of the milk from your mother? That means your mind is completely different. Your body's completely different. But that was me when I was a baby. What is that constant identity? It's the life force, the consciousness. The Bhagavad Gita describes this as the Atma, or the soul. And the Gita explains what is real intelligence. Not just getting a BA or a MA or a PhD or any of that. Real intelligence, the Gita explains, is to be enlightened from within and to be illumined from within. And to find joy from within. That's our nature. It is described that the Atma within all of us, the soul, the real you and me, the person, not the vehicle of body and mind, but the driving person, is Satchit Ananda, eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss. The traditional prayer among yoga students and spiritualists in India that is invocation before one speaks is Om Agyan Timidandasya. I offer my gratitude to the Guru who opens my eyes from the darkness of ignorance into the light of knowledge. In darkness, we fail to see the inherent opportunities in every situation. As we become enlightened from within, that light from within us spreads light to everything we perceive within this world. The world is no longer a place of darkness. It becomes a place of light, even in the most difficult situations. Because there's no fear. There's no anxiety. Because we are in connection to real internal stability. It's like this building, I believe it's 6 stories. It's a very nice building. It's in the Lower East Side of Manhattan in New York City. And people like the temple room. They like the yoga studios. But nobody has ever come here and said, what a fantastic foundation this building has. But factually, it's the foundation that holds up everything. If the foundation is weak, everything collapses. Enlightenment is that foundational perception of seeing the truth. When this truth is revealed within ourselves, we can see the truth in every situation. When there are problems, when there are tragedies, we can become depressed, bewildered, confused, because factually, whoever we are, whatever our background is, whatever our present situation is, there is going to be crisis. It's just part of this world. It's part of life. Sometimes I'm in contact with tremendously wealthy people, billionaires. And they are definitely not in any less anxiety and fear than common middle-class people or even poor people. They just have different kinds of anxieties and different kinds of fears. The more you have, the more you're afraid you'll lose. But a person who experiences the light within sees the light of opportunity in every single situation. I'll give an example that I often speak of because it moved me so much. One of my very dear friends and godbrothers, His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj. Have any of you ever heard of him? He was an African-American boy. He was brought up in the ghettos of Cleveland, in very much poverty. He told me when he was a little boy in grade school, he carried a gun with him everywhere he went. And he said every boy in the school practically carried a gun with them. A loaded, real gun, not a toy gun. Because that was the law of the land there. He said if somebody was harassing you, if you pulled your gun out to them, they would pull out your gun to you, and then you understand, if we don't get over this argument, one of us is going to die, and usually they would leave each other alone after that. Otherwise, you'd be harassed endlessly. But somehow or other, he came out of that. He went to Princeton University. He got a full scholarship, became a civil rights leader. But he was looking for truth. He was looking for meaning. He was looking for deep fulfillment. And ultimately he turned to the spiritual path and met our guru, Srila Prabhupada, became a Swami eventually, and soon was traveling around the world with thousands of followers. He was mentoring Nelson Mandela, Muhammad Ali, Alice Coltrane, and thousands of others. He wrote about 15 books. A few years ago, I met him in Pennsylvania. He was at his last stages of melanoma cancer. And he requested me to stay with him for those last days. Those last days ended up about 8 weeks, where I was at his bedside, and we were just discussing for a couple hours a day spiritual topics. And how grateful he was, and how happy he was. I remember one day his cancer, it was ravaging his body to such an extent. These situations would come and go. His whole body was trembling. I never saw him cry due to pain. But I was trying to speak, and the pain was just so intense. Do you like this story? You're not supposed to like it, but the pain was so intense that he couldn't focus on what I was saying. So I just began to chant God's names. And as I was chanting, we chanted together. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Very slowly. And suddenly, the most magnificent, blissful smile that anyone could ever possibly see blossomed upon his face. And tears poured from his eyes. Not tears of pain, tears of joy. And then he looked at me and he held my hand. And he said, "It doesn't get any better than this." And then he explained. He said, we're simply absorbed in tasting the sweetness of God's name. There's nothing else in the world except that experience of connecting with God. Then he said something I'll never forget. He said, "I would not trade the condition I'm in right now for anything or anyone else in the entire world, because how I am tasting the sweetness of God's name." He was in bliss. You see, for an enlightened person, yoga means to reconnect with ourself, reconnect with truth, reconnect with God, reconnect with the essence of all other living beings. All quarrel, all sectarianism, all divisions within families, between religions, between races, between sectors of society, between sexes, between nations, it's all due to the darkness of ignorance. I'm identifying with who I think I am, a body and a mind, and I'm identifying you according to your body and mind. And there's so many differences. I believe in the U.S. Constitution? All men are created equal? Or is that the Declaration of Independence? It's been a long time since I went to history class. But all men are created equal. Why it doesn't talk about women, I don't know. But all men are created equal. It's the basic premise of the American political system. But in the darkness of the physical and the mental platform, there are no two people of all species of life that are completely equal. We all have our strengths, we all have our weaknesses. Some are good workers, some are good athletes, some are intelligent, some are less intelligent. In academics, where is the equality that can actually unite us? On the platform of the soul. On the spiritual platform, We are all sparks of the same God, like sun rays emanating from the sun. We are all qualitatively, uniquely equal. Now, peace, real peace, is not just about somehow or other tolerating each other, building allies that will create fear among our enemies. Just like in the world today, building nuclear bombs and massive military is for the purpose of peace. When I was young, in grade school, there was the Cold War between America and Russia. And we were building our bombs for peace, and they were building their bombs for peace, and there were more and more and more bombs for peace. And in Red Oak School, where I went, 4th grade, 5th grade, we used to regularly, a couple times a year, have air raid drills. We'd be sitting in class, and the teacher would be, teaching us some mathematical equation on the blackboard, and we'd all be, the little boys would be throwing spitballs at the girls. I don't know if you do spitballs these days, but that was, in the 50s, that was a big thing. And then the teacher would turn around and everyone would go like this. All of a sudden, it was an air raid drill. And we would all have to crawl on our hands and knees underneath our desks and duck. Because what else are you supposed to do? Because there was serious fear that at any moment the Russians were going to drop bombs on us. And this was when one of the most economically thriving times of American history. Fear. So this kind of peace of trying to create a standoff through power is not really peace at all. Real peace is something very positive. Real peace comes when we are individually or collectively free of fear. That comes when we are enlightened from darkness. Darkness simply means the absence of light. When that light of knowledge of our eternal reality, of our eternal soul, awakens from within us, what is death? Is death something very, very horrible, mysterious, and fearful? Not at all. Death is just a change. For one who knows where they're going in life, death is just the opening of a door to a wonderful destination. Not just something that's theoretical, not just something that we imagine. Some people say like this, that religious people, they think about heaven and they think about enlightenment after death just so that they don't have to fear it. It's just an imposition on the mind. To somebody in darkness, that's what it appears. But for someone who has actually experienced the eternal nature of who I am and the joy of who I am, then death is just the door opening to a brilliant, most auspicious and beautiful destination. So what is there to fear? There's a beautiful verse in the Gita. When we experience the wisdom within our own heart, we see that same essence of the light of the soul in every living being. And love for all living beings becomes our nature. On the spiritual platform, it's natural to love everyone, because we don't see the disease. We see the person who is beautiful. I was giving a talk like this not long ago, and someone said, well, what about Hitler? Are you saying he was beautiful? Well, from my side, a good portion of my family members were murdered by the Nazis in Lithuania and other parts of Europe. So I was not raised with a good opinion of Hitler. My uncles, my aunts, they were killed. But the life force within him and every other living being is beautiful and perfect. But somehow or other, people allow themselves to be covered and covered and covered by so much of the darkness of ignorance. And to various degrees, it causes us to be envious, miserable, greedy, lusty, arrogant, angry, hateful, creating all kinds of ideologies and even theologies that breed hatred instead of love. There's a verse in the Gita that in the world today, religion is taken to be irreligion and irreligion is taken to be religion. People in darkness create all sorts of theologies and ideologies based on hatred and ego, and justify the most ungodly possible activities in the name of God. Hitler was in so much ignorance, he was convinced he was the second coming of Christ. And someone asked him, well, what about, turning the other cheek? He said, that part I'm not doing this. That part I don't accept. He thought it was his mission. This is to the degree the cloud of ignorance completely bewildered and deluded him and caused so much harm and pain in the world. That's the power of darkness. We all have the potential to go to that extreme or to go to the extreme of being selfless, compassionate lovers of God and all living beings. It's just a matter of whether we want to turn toward darkness or turn toward light. By our activities, by our desires, by the things and the people we associate with, do we want to perpetuate and increase the darkness of our ignorance? Human life is meant specifically for enlightenment, where we have free will, free choice. And with this free will and free choice, we can choose those activities, to be with those people, to cultivate those desires that awaken the divinity, the light within us. And we all have that free will. And there's no one and nothing that can take away our free will. We know the famous story of Socrates, when he was given that poison hemlock. And they said, drink this, we have come to kill you. And he had it and was about to drink it, and he smiled. He said, you'll never be able to kill me because you can't find me. Now he's in prison. and he's about to drink it. And he said, "You cannot kill me because you cannot find me." Now, for the jail keepers, they were thinking, this man is crazy. But actually, it was the jail keepers that were crazy, and the rest of the society practically, because he was enlightened. He was Brahman realized. He understood, I am the eternal soul. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said, "Na jayate mriyate va kadachit." The nature of the soul, it is unborn and it is undying. It cannot be cut into pieces by weapons, cannot be burnt by fire, cannot be moistened by water. It's beyond all these material considerations. It's everlasting. It's you. It's me. Yoga means to reconnect to our own essence. Religion, from the Latin word religio, means to reconnect, to bind one back to one's essence. It's the same thing. It's not about being Christians or Jews or Muslims or Hindus or Buddhists or Zoroastrians or Parsis or Jains or Sikhs or atheists or agnostics. It's about realizing our own essence. That's the whole purpose of all Dharma. Reconnecting not only with our own souls, but on that level, reconnecting with all other souls. Real peace can only come where there is real love. Because that is what the heart is yearning and longing for, love. In darkness, due to the cloud of ignorance, we're trying to find that experience through so many alternatives that just don't work. Because we're looking for something that's real. We want the pleasure of love. But when we forget it from within, then we seek it through all sorts of material arrangements which are temporary. You become attached to something, but inevitably it either fades in its experience of pleasure or it's lost. The love of romance. Man and woman are looking in each other's eyes and seeing the moon and the stars. But we've seen many instances where a few years later, they're in a divorce court looking at each other's eyes. And they're seeing blazing forest fires of each other's anger and hatred for each other. Yes. There's no permanence. We're looking in the wrong direction. Yoga is the art of finding the treasure of love from within ourselves and being instruments of that love by being compassionate beings to share that love with everyone and everything in this world. It may seem that that's something very far away, but actually, it's the very closest thing. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.